messing up.
Yeah, good luck with that in our conversation. At least your half might be serious, mine might not.
Okay, well, I don't really know how to start this, but I guess I'll ask you, just tell me more about you, I guess, because I don't know a lot. I just know from what my dad has told me. So, like, what you do for a living and how you've grown up and where you are today, like, business-wise.
Okay. Well, I was born the son of a poor black man. If you've seen The Jerk, you'd get that. Otherwise, it's going to be lost. I'm 43 years old. I live in Piperton, just down the street from you, I think, a little bit. Have a wonderful redheaded wife and two redheaded girls, no boys. Currently, at this particular point in time, they are 16 and 11, Kelsey and Alyssa. So I'm the only male in our household. Been married for almost 20 years. And if I rewind back to the beginning, I was born in Memphis. I've always been a Memphian. What was the rest of that question?
What you do for a living.
Okay, what do I do for a living? That's always a hard question for me to answer. I basically own a content company that creates content for the interwebs, things like blog posts and podcasts for other people. I don't immerse myself in the day-to-day operations anymore. I have a team of people, a small team of people who are all remote employees in different parts of the country who pull all the gears and turn all the knobs to make that magic happen. But it's all based on my vision for what the output needs to be for our clients. I have a history in the real estate investing arena. I haven't actively flipped houses since probably 2 years ago when I had that car crash. The pause button got pressed on my active real estate endeavors. But real estate investing has always been interesting to me, but it's never been the thing. I mean, I originally thought it was when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad back in 1999, I think. I was like, man, I want to be like that guy. Do you know Rich Dad Poor Dad, the book? Are you familiar with that? Okay. So I read it, just enamored. Man, Robert Kiyosaki, that guy's got it going on. And what he says just seems brilliant to me. I want to be like him. And he got started with rental properties, so I guess I'll get started there too. That's how I became a real estate investor. I started and ran a local RIA group, the Memphis Investors Group, at the time, because when I got on the internet, everybody whose articles I was reading said, new investors, find your local RIA group. And I was like, well, we don't have one in Memphis. I guess I'll just start one. And I didn't pretend to be a super advanced investor. I was just straight up honest with people and said, hey, I don't really know a lot about real estate investing yet, but this Rich Dad Poor Dad has made me want to be a real estate investor, and I know how to herd cats. So I guess I'll just start this thing. And we met in the back room of a Shoney's restaurant for our very first meeting. And that was in, I think, 2000. Fast forward to 2002, and I had bought a number of rental properties, but I bought them the wrong way. Didn't know what I didn't know, and I discovered the world of wholesaling houses, which I know you know a lot about, obviously. That was more interesting to me, and this is the first time I realized that maybe I'm not a real estate investor. Maybe I'm a certain type of real estate investor, because owning rental properties was like this drudgery work, managing rentals, buying and renovating rentals. It just felt like the necessary pain in the process, but it made me throw up in my mouth a little bit every time I was involved in it. But wholesaling houses, I liked the energy of it. I liked the quick in, quick out. There's just something about that version of the real estate investing world that was more interesting to me and drew me. So I decided to go full-time 2002 into the wholesaling houses arena. And that, looking back, that was a big lesson for me, was to, whatever it is that I'm doing, whether it's building a business or anything I'm involved in, to lean myself into the things that are a good fit for me, that focus on my strengths and my interests. I think a lot of the wisdom that we get in our culture now is figure out your strengths and figure out your weaknesses, and then focus on your weaknesses so they can get to be strong and become this well-balanced human being. Have you ever heard anything like that?
Sort of. Not in that sense, kind of, but like focus on the things you do wrong and make them better. But
Yeah. Well, I think that in regardless of the words that are used, focusing on your weak areas isn't, I can look back at my story and see that isn't really wisdom more often than not. There's certain things that you do want to strengthen weaknesses in. You know, if you curse at your parents all the time, that's a weakness that you want to strengthen. You want to, that's a rough edge that you want to smooth out. But when it comes to the things that you really look to sharpen the accent and become better at, I think if you focus on things that you're already naturally gifted in, you already have a natural propensity for, that is being a good steward of the way you're hardwired. We're all made differently, right? We're all made, this guy may be made a math doctor, this guy may be made an artist, and everything in between. But I think if the artist says, hey, I suck at math, so I'm going to really work hard on math so I can become a well-rounded person, that's not being a good steward of his fine art skill. So I think, circling back to my story, I realized that, man, I'm really interested in and good at wholesaling and not interested in rental properties. So I'm going to lean into the wholesaling arena. And I can see that value being cultivated and developed over my life in various ways as well. It started out as just an interesting experiment, but it's become a core value of mine to know yourself and lean into your strengths, not your weaknesses. I think the idea of being a well-balanced individual because you focus on your weaknesses is a farce. So fast forward a little bit, in 2006, I had discovered the world of internet marketing. I'm just answering the first question you asked me, so who knows where this is going to go. It's a long story. 2006, I had discovered the world of internet marketing, and I thought, oh, that's kind of fun. I was this full-time real estate investor, part-time internet marketing hobbyist. And then through a series of fortunate events, I had a guy whose name you probably know well, Steve Cook. I did a joint venture with him with our local RIA group, and he saw something in me that he needed in his website and said, hey, I need somebody like you to help me with the marketing and the internet marketing things with my website. Are you interested? And I saw an opportunity then. I had been in the real estate investing space for 7 years at that point, and I was successful by other people's standards, and I was even more successful by my own standards because I was leaning into a specific type of real estate investing that was more interesting to me. But I was a crying on the inside kind of clown. I looked good on the outside and it just didn't feel right. And there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle as to why it didn't feel right. But I really wasn't happy doing what I was doing, and I was realizing that. So when he offered me that, I said, well, this gives me an opportunity to still stay in the arena that I know so well, the real estate investing space. I have a lot of knowledge and contacts in real estate investing, but I can lean into this thing that's more interesting and fun to me, this internet marketing world. And these things I've been experimenting with, just kind of playing around with, I can use my connections and my insight in the real estate investing world and lean them into the internet marketing side and be like a part-time investor. So in 2006, I shifted that energy a little bit, became a part-time real estate investor, full-time internet marketer in the real estate investing arena. Fast forward to 2012, somebody approached me and said, hey, you do this stuff on the internet really good. You write blog posts and do podcasts really good. Will you do it for us? And these were other real estate investing gurus at the time. And at that point, I really wasn't looking for a job. I'm not against jobs, like morally or anything, but I just felt like that wasn't my identity to be an employee. And so I said, no, that sounds like a job. So thanks, but no thanks. They said, no, for real, we really want you. So please. I said, okay. I just threw out a number that I thought this is going to be way too high because there's no way that anybody would say yes to this. So I threw out a number and said, okay, I'll do it for this. And they said, okay. And I said, crap. now I've got to do this. So I gave him a caveat and I said, okay, look, I'll give this 6 months. I already had learned a lesson when I built a real estate investing business. Have you read the sequel to Rich Dad Poor Dad, The Cash Flow Quadrant?
I don't think so.
Okay. Highly recommend that, Collin. Reading the sequel to Rich Dad Poor Dad, The Cash Flow Quadrant, it really helped me understand the difference between these 4 quadrants. There's the E, employee, the S, the self-employed, the B, the business owner, and the I, investor. And it's not that any of them are worth less. They're all important pieces of this puzzle. But understanding where you are, which letter you are in that, and which letter you really want to be is a really important part of, I think, just knowing yourself well and being a good steward of the passions you've been given and the hard wiring that you've been given. So when I read the Cash Flow Quadrant and wrapped my head around that, I realized I thought I was a business owner. I thought I was a B, but really I was an S. I was a self-employed guy. And that was what was modeled to me from my dad. My dad was a stay-at-home artist. He was at home all the time, never went to a job, but everything depended upon him. He was the guy that had to wear all the hats in the business. And he wore the artist hat really well. People loved his artwork. He wore the financial hat really poorly because he didn't know how to manage his money and he blew it. And if you're the only person in a self-employed business, you're setting yourself up for failure in a lot of ways. And so we struggled. I got to see my dad soar as he would paint these wonderful portraits of people and struggle as he would not really know how to manage his money. And I think if he had, circling back to my lesson earlier, if he had tried to become better at managing his money, there could have been something to say for that. But I think it would have been a misuse of his God-given artisticness to try to learn how to be awesome at bookkeeping and money management. I think the better decision for him would have been to realize, I suck at money. I'm awesome at painting. Hey, next time I get a check, I need to hire a bookkeeper and an accountant to help manage these things for me so that they can use their unique geniuses and I can lean into what I'm good at and what I enjoy. So there's that lesson popping up again. So that was a tangent. Where was I? Do you remember what road I was traveling down?
Yeah, the book you were talking about, the 4 different types of people.
Yes. So I realized I was a self-employed guy, not a business owner, even though I thought I was a business owner. And when I told in 2012, when I made these guys an offer that I thought they would just turn down, and they said yes. And I was like, oh crap, I got to figure this out now. I said, look guys, I now know that I don't want to be your employee. I want to turn this into a business, or I want to build a template that I can hand you and you can hire people to do it. So I'll give this 6 months. And they said, okay, cool. So fast forward 6 months in early 2013, and I hired my first guy to work for me for that company. And that became the content marketing company that I accidentally built. And I say accidentally because I didn't sit down and think, hey, I'm really good at this. I'm going to build a business around it. I didn't see an opportunity and say, hey, there's a hole I can fill. Let's do it. God just kind of orchestrated the world around me and the people who knew me and saw the areas I was strong in. He orchestrated the opportunities, and he even orchestrated my responses to those opportunities in a way that this business was an outcome. So looking back, I really see that God wrote that story, and I just was along for the ride. kind of in spite of my ignorance, it worked out. So fast forward again, I started actively doing deals again just a little bit in 2015 maybe. So I have a content marketing business and I have a real estate business that thankfully I'm building as a business, not as my original real estate business that was a self-employed headache. And so today what I do is I own a company that does content marketing. One of my early clients, the first two guys who came to me and said, "Hey, we want you to do this for us." His name is Patrick. He and I went into business together because we have such a good culture together. We work well together. So I also have a partnership with him, an awesome REI. And I'm not yet back in the game of actively doing real estate deals. And I'm not sure, I don't need that in order to make ends meet. And so I'm able to just keep that pause button pressed after that inadvertently happened from my car crash. And so I don't really know for sure what shape my active real estate investing endeavors will take in the future. I'm just waiting for God to show me, to cultivate some obvious interest and opportunity. So I don't know. You tell me, what do I do for a living?
It seems like you. Well, I would like to ask. Would you say internet marketing is like your big strength, like compared to real estate?
Not anymore. I would say that my strength is, well, I've got on my wall over here. Yeah, it's going to be a much bigger answer to your question than you were hoping for, probably. What I've got on my wall over here is what I call my wall of self-indoctrination. You can't see it, but it's to my right. I've got things written on my wall that are big personal revelations and that have just went from like, man, that's a really good idea and that really resonates with me, to I want this to be part of who I am and my core values. So I'm going to give myself a visual reminder that I see constantly that kind of indoctrinates me to think those things. You know, have you ever learned something and thought, yeah, that's a really good idea, I should do that, and then it just goes away and you forget about it, or regular life takes over? I know that that's a risk. So over here on my wall, among the things that I have on my wall of indoctrination are the words think, talk, create, connect. And above those words are the question: if you could do only one thing with your life, what would it be? If you could do only one thing with your life, what would it be? And as I pondered that question, my answer to that question is I would do 4 things: think, talk, create, and connect. So that's my unique strength, I guess. And that's my answer to the question, what I do for a living. And what's interesting to me about that is, well, obviously there's lots of things interesting to me about it, but that's not a job title, right? You can be a garbage man, you could be a real estate investor. It's not a label. Think, talk, create, and connect. Those words came to me as I asked myself, if I look back at my whole life, what are the times in my life where it just felt easy? Things just like were energizing to me. I would do things or have conversations with people that just, man, you've ever been in the zone? You're just like, man, time stood still. You could be talking to somebody for like 2 hours and it just seemed like 10 minutes went by. Those are clues to how you're hardwired and the things that are naturally life-giving to you. Those are important clues. And as I looked back and did an inventory of my life and asked myself, what are the things I've done that felt easy and fun, and maybe where time just kind of sped by without me realizing it? And I remembered things like when I had an opportunity to act. I remembered my own creative expressions. I remembered how much I have an interesting itch where I like to scratch of writing. I'm writing things with personality and flair. And I just thought of these kind of seemingly unrelated dots on the map. And I made note of them. I was kind of brainstorming the whole thing. So I made note of what ideas came to mind as I asked myself, looking back, what those moments were like and what the ingredients were in those moments. And then I asked myself, okay, here's 5 or 6 things that seem to really be described as those moments. What are the common ingredients between them? They may be in very different times of life, but what are the common ingredients that I could use to give me a little closer look as to my own hardwiring and how the type of unique individual that God has created me to be? And I realized that the common ingredients for all of those things are things I really enjoy, things where I just get to think, I get inside my head. When I get to communicate, talk, when I'm like what we're doing right now, I really enjoyed interviewing people. I really found asking people questions about themselves, and then when they respond to that question, using their response as a seed for the next question. Those kind of conversations feel really life-giving to me. They feel just like, man, this is easy and fun. And I realized, man, there's other people who just hate those conversations. And the idea of interviewing somebody is wildly intimidating and scary. And I just look at those people and go, well, it's not that hard. Just, it can be fun if you just think about it a different way. But it's because of my hard wiring that I think it's fun and easy. That, I think, is an interesting clue as to the things that might be part of your unique genius, are things that feel intuitive and easy and fun to you that everyone else thinks are really hard and admire you for. Those are clues. So I realized I like to talk to people. I like communicating in various ways. I like creating things, in art and drama, in writing. Those are kind of creative expressions. And also I really like connecting people like you to ideas like what we're talking about right now, connecting people I know to other people I know. If I'm asking you what's going on in your life and how, what kind of things are you struggling with, and I hear that you've got a problem that I know somebody who has an answer to, and I say, man, I need to connect you with this guy. That's a life-giving activity for me. So think, talk, create, connect. Those are the 4 common ingredients that I realized were present in all of those points on the map. And that's why I wrote them on my wall. It's to remind myself that I'm here at the highest level. I'm here on this earth to do those 4 things and do them well. Think, talk, create, connect. And the more of those 4 things that can overlap simultaneously when I'm doing something, the awesomer it is. The more I just feel like I'm in the zone, time standing still. This is awesome. So the reason I say that's what I do for a living is it gave me the freedom to step outside of a job, using a job to define myself. I don't define myself as an internet marketer, as a real estate investor, as a blogger, as a content marketer. Those are all labels, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but they're labels that can fit a role, but they don't describe who I am and who I really feel like I need to be in whatever role I'm in. So you can see now why it's kind of a stressful question for me to answer when somebody says, what do you do for a living, or what's your job? You didn't know how deep you were getting into a rabbit hole there, did you?
Not really. When did you
well, one of the things on my list is talk. So I clearly like to talk.
Mm-hmm. When did you put all the dots together? Like, that was what you were like, that was what you defined you, kind of like those 4 things. When did you like figure that all out?
I think it was within the last 5 years. All the ingredients, all the evidence was there, but I wasn't wise enough to ask myself the questions that led me to those dots on the map and the clarity of think, talk, create, and connect. I wasn't wise enough probably until the last 5 years to ask myself the right questions to lead me there.
Okay. So change of gears. What kind of changed when you had the car accident, what happened, what in your mind and how you worked, what changed after that happened to you?
How deeply do you want to go into that rabbit hole?
Is whatever answers the question the right way.
Well, when I had the car crash, may I tell you the story of emerging from the car crash and um, the moments of clarity and the things that God spoke to me during that process. And I think that will start to answer your question. I came it's almost a year ago when I emerged from my 5 weeks unconscious in the hospital. I don't have any memory of the car crash. I don't remember riding back on the airplane with your mom and dad the week before from a life in air retreat and horsing around. In fact, when your mom visited me in the hospital, not having that memory, I thought I was meeting her for the first time. And I could tell she knew me, and I just kind of faked it like, hey, nice to see you again. So as I came to, I found myself just trying to get my head around what happened and thinking, okay, apparently I've been in a car crash. I got to figure this out. And I remembered enough about my life to know I have a certain vision for the kind of father and the kind of husband that I want to be for the rest of my life. Am I going to be able to be that? I couldn't really understand how much I'm going to be able to recover physically, mentally. I had a pretty negative paradigm of car crashes because my dad was in a car crash in 2012 and he had brain damage. He had to get a piece of his brain surgically removed, and he hasn't gotten out of bed since then and doesn't even know what time of life it is. I knew I wasn't that bad, but I didn't know where am I going to be on the spectrum. And as I began to ask myself these questions, I began to just kind of spiral into sadness and confusion, like circling a drain inside. It wasn't outward. And that's when God spoke to me. And let me describe what I mean by that. I have been a Christian my whole life. As far as I know, I don't remember a conversion experience. So it happened before I was able to form memories, I guess. So my whole life I've had a relationship with Jesus, but it has felt experientially mostly like a one-way conversation. You know, God would speak to me through reading the Bible, and I would focus on a verse or on a passage and think, okay, that's really meaningful to me. And I would interpret that as God speaking to my heart. But it has not historically for me been like me hearing either audibly or getting like a download of information. So that's why I say it's felt mostly like a one-way conversation of me praying. I know God's listening to me, and I see evidences of his answers to my prayers, but it's not been like a back and forth. There's a couple of exceptions to that early in life that I can think of, but it was a very distinct message, and it wasn't something I heard with my ears in the hospital, but it was a very clear message that was downloaded into my brain. And what he said to me was, yes, you have been in a bad car crash, but this was not an accident. You can trust me. I've got this. What I expect of you moving forward is to pay attention and be ready. And there's a couple of specific reasons that I'm convinced that was a message from God directly. Number one, it's not a normal pattern inside me to just, suddenly decide, okay, I'm just going to cheer myself up and change my thoughts. It was like a mental switch got flipped where I was thinking sadness and depression, and then all of a sudden these thoughts just happened really distinctly. And it was really specific words that occurred. Number two, it was a change in me that was instantaneous. I went from feeling sad and circling that drain to feeling freaking excited. And that's not normal for me either. It was like a light switch got flipped, and I went to feeling joy because the freaking creator of the universe just spoke to me. The guy who thought and spoke all things into existence like that. I've always, theologically, I've always seen myself, I've always believed that I'm part of God's plan, but more like in an umbrella sense, you know, like we're all pieces on this divine chessboard, and God is moving the pieces on the board, but I'm one of those pieces, and what a cool idea that is. But now this is more than just that. This is God has a specific plan for me. There's a reason I didn't die. And it wouldn't have been the worst in the world if I had died, right? It would have been really sad for my family, but I would have been in heaven. So it wasn't like he saved me from peril. He saved my family from sadness for the rest of their lives. But he gave me an idea that there's a specific purpose he has for me in this journey, and I get to discover what that is. What an exciting adventure to be on, to realize that I don't know what that is, but God wants me to pay attention and be ready for whatever it is. That's freaking exciting. So there was that shift in me that made me convinced that was God. That was a two-way conversation. He started the conversation. And then if I fast forward about 6 months, I just was kind of riding that high. I remember being at a Chick-fil-A. I was by myself at Chick-fil-A. Woo, Chick-fil-A. And I noticed one of the people working there. I was just eating lunch by myself, and I noticed one of the employees. She was just kind of special needs in some way. I don't know if it was maybe autism or a little Down syndrome or something. I just something about the way she was carrying herself. I couldn't be precise, but I could tell she had some special needs in some way, and she was cleaning off tables and putting away trash. And my first thought is, man, good on Chick-fil-A, you know, giving somebody who's in that situation an opportunity to feel normal and be a part of, you know, you have a job and you have the special needs. That's got to feel important and valuable to them. So I kind of high-fived Chick-fil-A in my mind. And then I noticed that this girl was not making eye contact with people. In fact, she was deliberately avoiding eye contact with people. As she would walk by and clean the table, she was kind of in a pronounced way, keeping from people making eye contact with her. Then I had the thought, you know, it's got to be hard for her too. I'm sure she knows she's different in some way, and it's probably really hard for her to work and feel normal in this space. And then I just had the thought, I'm just going to make her smile. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I just thought, I'm just going to make her smile, and I'm just going to find some way to do it. So without any kind of plan other than just that idea, I was done eating. I picked up my trash, walked over to the big pile of trash cans she was about to take out, put my trash on top, and then just stood there and just smiled, just looked at her and smiled. It's long and uncomfortable. And I was like, I had the thought, she's at some point she'll see me and look at me. I'm sure it. So then she eventually looked at me, and without having rehearsed it at all, I just said, you know, I really appreciate you doing the trash. I know it's your job, and I know, you know, it just comes with the territory, but there's a lot of trash here. And if you weren't here to pick it up, a lot of us here wouldn't enjoy our lunch nearly as much. I was sitting here right next to the trash, and it would be a lot worse if I had to sit next to this big pile of trash the whole time. So I really appreciate you picking up the trash. Thank you. And I just smiled, and I could, you know, have you ever said thank you to someone and they don't know what to say back? Like, you're saying you're welcome just feels weird somehow, and you just say thank you back for saying thank you.
My pleasure, right? They say my pleasure, right?
It could be, yeah, but she didn't say that. She said thank you, and I can tell I connected with her humanity in some way. She just smiled and said thank you, and that felt good. It wasn't like I made, you know, I don't know if I made a big difference in her life. And that was what was really cool, is I just didn't have to know. I was like, I could have just given her a simple smile, or it could have been that she was about to go cut her wrists in the bathroom in an hour, or somewhere in between. I don't have to know what the rest of her story is like. I just know that I got to build her up in some way. And that felt right. And then I went to the dentist after that, and I was kind of riding that high, and I saw the receptionist, and I thought, man, I'm gonna make a connection with her. And she said, hey, who are you here to see? And I told her the doctor's name, and I said, how are you? And I asked just enthusiastically like that. She said, I'm fine. You can just have a seat. And I said, no, I'm really asking, how are you? I really mean it as an actual question. And she said, well, honestly, today's been a little rough because of this and this and this. And then it got a little better this afternoon because of this and this and this. Thanks for asking. How are you? And I answered her question concisely as best I could. But then I sat down and thought, yeah, that felt good too. And the day before, I had a conversation with my bookkeeper for the house guys. And I realized this is the first time I talked to my bookkeeper since the car crash. And we had scheduled an hour on my calendar for worky talk, businessy things. And we finished in 30 minutes. And so I was like, man, I finished early. Hoorah, I can go do something fun or eat lunch early or go hang out with the family. And then I had the thought, I haven't talked to Matt, my bookkeeper, since the car crash. I should just use this next few minutes to catch up with him in life. So I said, Matt, man, I haven't caught up with you in a long time. How's your life? And he said, well, I don't know if you heard, but I got a divorce. And it was in that moment where you have kind of that awkward, like, oh, what do I do with this? I didn't see that coming. The race through my brain, the options, I could say, oh, that stinks. Look at the time. I got to go. Or I could just whatever. And I had the thought, I'm just going to sit with him and I'm not going to pry in, but I'll walk as much as he's willing to let me walk with him in that story. And I said, man, I did not know that. Tell me about it. And we just had a conversation over the next 30 minutes that were already on my calendar about, I didn't even know he had 2 kids. He shared with me that the hardest part about it was getting his 2 young kids, the really young kids, used to the idea that their parents aren't married and living together anymore. And I was embarrassed to realize I don't even know if he's a Christian or if he has any kind of faith. And so I said, Matt, I don't know. I've never talked about God or if you even believe in God, but I'm just curious if you see God in any way in this story. And fast forward to the end, he didn't have like some major conversion experience. It wasn't like there's not some big epic turning point that led to, but it just felt right. You know what I mean? It just felt like I connected with we scheduled the hour on my calendar to talk about businessy things. We got the businessy things done in the first half hour, but it was the second half hour that really mattered. That's where the stuff of life took place. So after those 3 things happened, the Chick-fil-A, the receptionist, and my bookkeeper conversation in a 2-day period, that's when God stepped back in and he connected the dots. He reminded me of what he said to me in the hospital: pay attention and be ready for things like this, for opportunities that you see, that you notice, where you can step in and build someone. I read a book at the time called Sacred Intersections, and man, I highly recommend this book to you. It's a super short read. Wish I had it on my shelf right now. I'd show it to you. But if you do anything after this inordinately long conversation, I recommend you go to Amazon and pick up Sacred Intersections. The idea of the book is that what if every time you cross paths with someone, it's not just a random thing, the person who's serving you at the restaurant, the girl at Chick-fil-A, the receptionist, the conversation with your bookkeeper. What if it's a sacred intersection? It's pregnant with opportunity, just waiting for you to step into. And you're not responsible for that outcome, right? You're not responsible for knowing the rest of the story, but what if you step into that story for that moment and engage the humanity of that person in a way and pay attention and are ready to step in and build that value. That, I feel like, is the mission that God gave me. That's the clarity of mission he gave me and purpose for why I didn't die in the car crash. It's to pay attention and be ready to build people. I know you're familiar with this, the parable of the servants and the talents. God reminded me of that parable at the time as well. And, all the three servants, all of whom were given from the master, they were given various amounts of money. Those are the talents, right? And the two who invested it and got a return, and then the one who was afraid and he buried it. I've always thought of that parable as, man, that's harsh, that when the master came back, who represents God in the parable, he was like, you wicked servant. It's not like he went and spent the money, right? He buried it because he was afraid and he didn't want to lose it. But I think saying that the servant is wicked is not because he didn't go squander the money he was entrusted with. It's because he didn't understand that the best stewardship of what he was given is stepping into taking some risk with it. It's taking measured risks. And if he had invested the money and had lost it all, I don't think he would have been called a wicked servant. It was because he was afraid. Anything done out of fear is not of God, right? God doesn't give you a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and of a sound mind. So the parable of the servants and the talents, God shared with me that that's life. We all are those servants. And the talents are not money or literal talents. It's every freaking thing in our lives. We talk about things like they're ours, right? This is my desk. This is my ball. I'm famous for this ball. This is my day, my time, my family. I don't own any of those things, man. That's not Colin's hat on his head.
Actually, my dad's.
Okay, well, especially not then. I'm a steward of these things, and I am being entrusted with them for a season. And at any point, God could choose to, this is the days he's numbered for me, so it's time for me to go home. And I imagine myself dying in my 80s or 90s, not at almost dying at 43 years old. That could have been the end of my story. The reason it wasn't the end of my story is God wanted to emphasize to me and to other people that I'm here on this earth to pay attention and be ready to step into the sacred intersections he puts in front of me. He gets to write the rest of that story. I just get to play a part in it. And that mission is being the best steward of the resources that he's given me. And I very much long for the day at the end when I get to look at him and hear good and well done, good and faithful servant. So again, very long answer to your question.
Yeah. So going off of actually the book Obstacles Away, like did you have like any obstacles as in your younger years of working and building up a business? Like what were some of those obstacles, or if you didn't have any, that'd be awesome. But what were some of your obstacles that you had that were blocking kind of like your full potential of building a business?
Well, I think one of the obstacles was just a lack of perspective, as demonstrated by the clarity that I gained of perspective when I read the cash flow quadrant. Right, I didn't really have an understanding of the difference between a self-employed and a business owner, and until I understood that difference, I thought I was building a business. So I didn't have the information and the perspective. Those are obstacles for me in the journey. For me, it's not about, I think obstacles is, the word itself challenges me. I almost want to reframe those obstacles as rungs in the ladder that you have to climb up. You see where you want to go, right? It's the top of the ladder, but you can't get there until you walk up each rung. You literally have to touch each rung in the ladder. And some of them are easy and some of them are hard, but they're all essential. And every obstacle, every mistake, every close call, every piece of that puzzle, every tragedy you experience is a necessary rung in that ladder. It's a necessary part of the process of getting from here to there. You just can't see them all. So I feel like thinking about the answer to your question, I can think of things I didn't know that I learned down the road. I can think of mistakes that I made, but I'm super grateful for all of that. I cherish those things because they are part of me. They are an important part because God wrote them into my story. They're an important part of who he wanted me to be. So I'm not answering your question. I just realized going all philosophical again.
My question in a way, like one of the questions I was gonna ask was like, what would you change as your younger self? But that question really, it doesn't fit in well because you said that everything you've done, you cherished it because it's all like God's plan. Like everything that he did was gonna make you to what you were today. So instead of asking that question, I would ask, what would you tell people like me and like the early 20s through 20s, like what would you tell them to do? Like what would you like change? Like so
what words of advice would I have that might help
advice.
your learning curve?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I'm grateful to hear that you read The Obstacle is the Way. I think a lot of what I would have to say would play into that arena. I have on my wall of indoctrination over here, Ben Franklin quote, those things that hurt instruct. And I was just listening to, I don't know if you've listened to Tim Ferriss's podcast. I'm a big fan. I was just listening to his Terry Crews interview. Have you heard that?
I've not. I've listened to Tim Ferriss. I haven't seen this Terry Crews interview.
Highly recommend the Terry Crews interview. I think it might almost be 2 hours long or something like that. It is so good. And it's so good because of Terry Crews, not because of what Tim Ferriss added. Terry was on in that interview. You know who I'm talking about, right? The football player, the Old Spice guy, and he's on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Okay. Terry said something very much along those lines. He told in his own story how he has discovered how important, how critical it is to reframe things in a way that's to your benefit. He told the mistakes he's made and the tragedies he's experienced and what a difference it made when, rather than focusing on the negative facet of a thing, he decided to give it a different meaning and choose a meaning that was life-giving to him and that sharpened the axe for him rather than degraded him. In fact, I was just writing this morning. Let me read to you what I wrote. It says it better than I just said it right now. When I don't control external events, I can choose how I respond. While I don't control external events, I can choose how I respond to those events. I'm able to control what every external event means to me personally. This includes the difficult one in front of me right now. I can control the meaning of these things and what they mean to me and respond to them, both externally and internally, in a way that reflects that meaning naturally. Terry Crews, in his Tim Ferriss interview, said it well. You've got to reframe things in a way that's to your advantage, in a way that builds you up and makes you better rather than degrading or diminishing you. It reminds me of a year ago, I had a similar revelation. I was out mowing the lawn and I was listening to an audio book, Harry Dresden book. I'm a big Harry Dresden fan for any fans out there. So as I was listening to this book, I realized I read this book before the car crash. And as I'm listening to it now, I'm reading it for the second time and I don't remember the story. I literally, it was happening like as if I hadn't read it before. And I found myself thinking, man, this just reminds me of the amnesia that I have and how sad that is that I can't remember stuff. And man, And as I began to kind of marinate in the sadness of that, I had a light bulb, and I realized these thoughts that I'm having, these thoughts are just things. They're things that I'm giving a definition to right now. The fact that I can't remember the story of a book I read means amnesia, it means sadness. I don't have to fool myself into pretending that those things didn't happen or that they're not real, but I can choose to look at a different angle of the thing and look at a perspective, shifting my perspective in a way that feels life-giving to me. And so I thought, man, who else gets to watch a movie for the second or third time and get to experience it as if it's for the first time? I had just watched Rogue One for the second time and had the same realization. I was like, I don't really remember this movie, even though I saw it before the car crash. And I thought, man, who else? Lucky me. Who else gets to do that? I get to re-enjoy things that I remember enough about them to know that I enjoyed them, but I get to have a second dose that's just as vibrant as the first dose. And I high-fived myself on the lawnmower, and I literally realized I changed my state by simply changing my perspective on a thing. I reframed. I didn't fool myself into believing a lie, right? I just looked at the side of this that gave me life, that gave me energy, that sharpened the axe inside me, rather than the one that degraded me and made me feel small and weak. And I had a change of state. I was physically changed my state once I had that realization. And that was a really powerful afternoon on the lawnmower. So that's what I would say to my 16-year-old self, or to you right now, is to always make that not just a good idea, embed that inside you, and find a way to remind yourself when you experience the sad things, the traumas, the tragedies in life, the disappointments, big or small. Ask yourself, what different meaning can I give this that's legitimate, that will change my state, that will be life-giving to me rather than degrading me? I would also, another thing I would say to myself is a concept. This is also on my wall. It's called Kaizen. Have you ever heard of that word? Kaizen. It's a concept that it's been credited as perhaps the biggest key to Japan's worldwide competitive success in all industries. And I'm going to read it off my wall. Kaizen essentially means everyone involved in making continuous improvement. But one of the most notable features of Kaizen is big results come from many small changes accumulated over time. That's the really powerful part. Kaizen, big results come from many small changes over time. If you're familiar with the Slight Edge, have you ever heard of the book, The Slight Edge?
It sounds familiar, just the name, but I can't remember anything.
That's another one I would put on your list if possible. But the idea is basically to change your trajectory in life. You don't have to do like a 180 change, 180 degree change. You can just change 1 degree, one small degree. It may feel like nothing, but if you change 1 degree on a radius, that changes the trajectory. It makes a bigger and bigger and bigger difference. And many of those small changes over time equal a huge difference. I was just reading someone talk about the practice of mini habits. The guy hated exercise, hated working out. His avoidance behavior would kick in every time he sat down to work out. And so he decided I'm just going to make it stupid simple. Instead of trying to sit down and check that box for 30 minutes of workout, I'll just say I succeeded if I can do 1 push-up. And so he literally did 1 push-up, and then he checked that box for the day. And then the next day, he was even laughing at himself. He did 1 push-up the next day, and then he checked that box, and then he moved on the next day. Small, tiny mini habits, right? And what he found is once he was continuous with that and established it as a routine, he was interested in doing more than 1 push-up. He was interested, and he would go to 10, and he would go to 15. And over time, he established a ritual of exercise that he wouldn't have been able to establish had he not started with the small mini habits, small changes, and committed to it over time. So small changes over time make big results, and mini habits rule. Those are a couple more gems that I would toss at you.
Okay. So, what do you think about my dad? That's I just want to ask a question about learn what other people think about my dad as a
I
person.
like it.
I know him differently from other people.
Yeah, yeah. I like it. Well, my first thought in that question is he's got a beautiful shiny head, and I like to touch it as often as possible when we're together. Um, I think he is especially gifted at making people feel comfortable. I see him interacting with people that he knows, but also that he doesn't know, and just interacting with them in a way that's inviting and disarming. And I think that he's got a special gift at that. It's not work. I think if he probably not easily accept that um, as a gift, because it just feels so fun and easy and organic. But I think that's one of my first thoughts in answering that question. He also strikes me as true friendship. I think he's demonstrated for me, and I've seen him demonstrate for other people, what it means to be an authentic friend that's interested in other people, not just what he can get from other people. Have you known people in your life where you're just like, I don't know if you have or not, but I've known people in my life where I can just tell it's friendly, but there's a difference between friendly and friendship. We're friendly, but it really comes down to the exchange of goods, where they want me to give them something of value, and in return they give me something of value. And there's some value in that. I think it's part of the world we live in, but that's not friendship. And I think from your dad, I would say he demonstrates an authentic friendship that feels like it doesn't have strings attached. That's a really meaningful thing. Yeah. So those are the two things off the top of my head.
Well, I have this question. This is more like a personal question that I've been like thinking about. I asked my dad, what is a better teacher in life, experience or mentorship? What do you think? Like, which is a better teacher for like just going through life? What do you think teaches better, experience or a mentor?
I think the answer to that question depends upon the person. It depends upon your hardwiring. You might be someone who, more often than not, will need to experience something in order to actually learn it. Or you might be someone who recognizes and values other people's experience and learning from it, so that you don't have to have it as part of your journey. Or I think probably all of us are, to some degree, hybrids of those two things. I can think of if I look back in my life, there's a lot of things that I was able to learn by seeing it in other people, either in their story firsthand or having them share it with me, and able to make different decisions based on the insight that they gave me. So I can see that in my story, but there's also things that I just was too, I don't know if prideful or arrogant or narrow-minded enough. I was something like that too much, so that I couldn't learn the lesson from them. I had to learn it experientially. So that's not really an answer to your question. I guess it's a both and. I feel like there's not one that's a solid, definite answer across the board for all people.
Okay. I'll end with this last question. I see a Star Wars poster in the back. What is your favorite Star Wars movie?
Great question. Definitely A New Hope. Definitely. It's the origin story. It's where the characters get created, and even in its campy silliness, things that you look back and go, yeah, that's obviously the CGI didn't exist back then, so there's like obvious goofs. Yeah, I think that has a charm. maybe that's indicative of my age. You know, I was born in 74 and it came out in 79, I think. But that's the one I enjoy the most. I pretend that the prequels don't exist. And I think the jury is still out on Disney's sequels for me.
Disney's are terrible, in my opinion.
I think there's a lot of aspects of them that are terrible. I don't.
I like Solo.
Yeah, I like Solo too. Although it's hard, I just can't get. I can't get Harrison Ford out of my head, so I can't not think he's not Harrison Ford. He's not Harrison Ford. He's not Harrison Ford. But on the other side of that coin, I really thought Harrison Ford just completely phoned it in his appearance in the Disney sequel when he got killed off. I was just like, he's not Harrison Ford. He's not Harrison Ford. He's not Harrison Ford. So definitely, I would say A New Hope. What's your answer to that question?
I like Empire Strikes Back. That's my favorite.
Yeah, what do you like about it?
Well, it was just the progression of the characters. It really was like, it was like different. You got to see different sides of everyone. You got to see just Luke's like pure emotion when he found out that Darth Vader was his father and stuff.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of, it was actually, yeah, and Harrison Ford was even better in that one. And then you got to see a darker Darth Vader. He just had no remorse. He cut off his son's hand. So it was very well put together by George Lucas, I feel like.
Well, it does have, The Empire Strikes Back has a special place in my hierarchy as the standard setter for sequels. It's absolutely positively the best sequel to any movie that's ever happened. And every other sequel to any movie I compare to Empire Strikes Back compared to Star Wars. So I agree with you. It's pretty good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I really appreciate your questions, and I appreciate you enduring my long, drawn-out answers.
No problem.
Did your dad warn you at all that this guy likes to talk a lot?
My mom warned me that you would get off topic.
Legit. Awesome.
That's all I got. I didn't get warned by my dad. He just said, do it.
Oh, sorry.
I'm a great off-topic getter, that's for sure. All right.
All right. Hey, JP. Just say thank you, JP, and then.
Thank you, JP.
All right. Thank you.
I appreciate it. You have a great one, sir.
All right. See you guys. Bye.